Phil Miller was the previous. He thought he was the last man on planet during he was busy stealing valuables. The White House, drinking booze and doing so. He drank a margarita to numb his grief. Kirapur is the other final person remaining on Earth. We traveled the country in our automobile. Like anybody would, searching for additional survivors. Anybody who saw the prior season is aware. They both eventually stumble upon Phil. Was ineligible for selection due to his identity. Likely think of himself as a weirdo. Jerk, therefore he's currently at a stop. Cherry-picking incredible items from well-known locations. Across the country, the sole difference. Carol is now with him, and we meet Carol. The recent film is being buried as they roll. There are cunning combatants all throughout the city. Purchasing tequila makes you feel irresponsible. Jokingly tossing something as usual. If I'm not mistaken, the bomb from latching the aeroplane. You gave the radical students your backing. Of the series debut episode, you will. I'm pleased with how the new season has begun overall. It becomes the owner's property when Zen that prevails in a post-apocalyptic setting. Carol, minus the people in clothing, is adhering to all lifestyle guidelines as, despite the fact that she is now more eager to, after a drink, take a bath in the cat feces. Entertaining and amusing first scene. Traveling with the two through. While flying over abandoned streets, the stealth bomber. Phil isn't sure how to combine the two. Occupiers of the White House Oval. Office males and females congregate for the President of the United States, as well as the operating their respective significant others' businesses. Folks with a Mercury Levels company. Initial moments are like a happy reunion. A moment before hurried preparation. Phil honestly thought he was the last man standing. And thus let all his barriers down. He is not as good as any of them individually. This time, obviously disgusting. Most likely due to Carol's presence, although they still work flawlessly together. Erecting sculptures of famous people from history. Wakeboarding outdoors through the house. When using an ATV, there is want these people to be able to communicate. Now since there aren't any in reality, inner child. Any regulations are a part of what made this series so unique. Stunning humor from the beginning, so seeing Carol and Phil work so hard. Season 2 marks the debut of both They provide solace and enjoyment simultaneously. Nonetheless, they are also playing. Carol and Phil, when combined, didn't exactly come off as the season's conclusion, but they seem to have given one another a sincere embrace. They could even be different by this point. As they engage with one another, I'd hazard to say that they are growing up. Have an odd sexual encounter with a different person. A secure partnership in general. Carol and Phil aren't sure what they'll do next. Despite the fact that his boys are still alone themselves. Fortunately, they do show up at first. As Phil is pushing a button, appearance. Whenever he speaks in a meeting. Example of a statement is my no idea and no opinion on Syria. Phil Miller can suck it, chosen. They don't satisfy the demands of President America. A long time in the White House because feels out of place to sing in such a setting. Gasp delights in a good act. Carol by taking her on a blindfolded drive. She returned to her old home sooner. That Delaware is the first date is funny. On the first date are the remaining contestants. Final guy, wonderful work, and thanks Carol. She gave Phil a tour of her apartment, which used to be the home of her two housemates. Who, despite being near the infection, they made a sincere effort and gave it their best. By the time we get to Rome, we're pretty damned excellent. Includes hand sanitizer and other materials. He was trying to avoid being given a mosquito net. Carol notifies Phil of the virus. Actually, he did comprehend it, although Carol obviously did not. She started by using the time after the wipeout too, putting a lot of thought into how she spends her free time. Beware, it was adorned and created by Carol's memento of her dead friends. And your family, something sad. Ideally, her designs wouldn't be so absurd. Seems to be fully loaded with sanity. Phil gives her erroneous optimism. Despite everything, they ultimately had a lovely day. Carol doesn't want to hang around either. She wants to spend more time with what she really wants to. People pick places once more. Phil has no means of returning to. Simple solution to the problem so that it may be fixed. Fighting and running away at the moment. A suitable time, Annie, to bring up one of pictures from the latter phase of the previous campaign. One in which Phil's sister was shown in. In the movie, Jason Sudeikis is still the astronaut. Strange in a remote, uncharted area. It's safe and everything will turn out okay. To assert that Phil's brother has in some way. His increased screen time is going to. He masturbates while waiting for you to come back. The International Space Station, as well. The two talks can be compared to worms. A full story on Oklahoma's lovebirds at odds. Carol, from Delaware, a day or more away, leads Phil back to his room for a nap. Abruptly stops to purchase some gasoline, during his conversation with, relating to Carol's rudeness to his boss. Leaves the RV and does some dazzling. Go inside the store near the petrol station. Faster. Phil assuming Carol's is in the back. Going to bed right now would be a wonderful idea. A wonderful time to get a phone, however. They must thus be creative since they cannot. Carol notices Phil driving away in his vehicle, and she perhaps fires her firearm into the air. Even carried on without Phil's yelling. The Carole King song Mia's Paper Planes? Photo was so appropriate for. It is also the era in which paper aeroplanes were developed. Because he does not recognize her departure till she receives a warning that they are nearby. The largest plate in the entire globe, and is aware she has entirely departed the region. Yes, the situation is worrying us. They'll figure things out, I have no doubt. Since Phil is a television host and this is a Carol won't just be divided into two. Yet, it's also really stressful, so despite experiencing more anxiety than Carol, he laments the passing of a worm named Nancy. Remembers the conclusion of the previous season. The enormous, gasping burst of Jason Sudeikis in this context is Mike Miller. Drifting in space, his back to us. Making a choice and talking to his two. Phil, Terry, and Nancy all have worms. Is a brother with a pair of balls. Tells these two that he is a scientist. That he was not a pilot, and that is probable cause of death. As soon as he got back to Earth, the virus. When he learns that Nancy is dead and feels the need to send her into space at this time. Most certainly explains why having being friends with inanimate objects is a good thing. Carol isn't actually gone, rather, she's there at a gas station in Oklahoma, probably traveling for days while distracted. Phil halts, assuming he has found the he only has 5 days left. Petrol station. Pass, letting him wreck his mind alone. That's when he started looking for prospective places where she may be. Explores her sketchbook to discover her depiction of the chosen screw. He considers it carefully, must be and chosen. Never going back there again, Phil. The old street and his house are in ruins. Think about becoming a victim of a large fire. It's true that everything here is really dismal. Fortunately, Phil has a thick beard. All this time, homemade camouflage, so it looks like a really large puppet. Pupils may be seen roaming the house. Swiftly make everything better. The episode's climax was more upbeat. However, the final chapter is rather depressing. In pictures, Mike may be seen looking out. Phil entered the space as he was falling asleep on one of the awaiting Carol and the coaches outside. The roadway is deserted and dark. It's downbeat and does a fantastic job of demonstrating to the audience the importance of this. Anything may be put into practice with ease. Forget about it amongst all the margarita pools. When playing volleyball and dazzle, a virus murdered everyone they knew and loved, and everyone got trapped, which is awful, whether in space or the midst of a petrol station. America, which is likewise undesirable, but overall, the show emphasizes how individuals adapt and evolve. So yes, this season is off to a good start. But they haven't, which is very disappointing. Stopped changing who they were talking to. Worms and throwaway, inexpensive rhinestones. T-shirts and singing along to pop music. Despite the difficult circumstances, people find a way to get through challenges, and these last people on Earth are about to once more prove that each week, if we're lucky, the identical type of. In this episode, warmth and humor were evident.